Building on last year's success, Defender Europe 21 will build readiness and interoperability between allies and partners and prepare our forces to rapidly respond to crisis and conduct large-scale combat operations if called upon. It will exercise U.S. Army Europe and Africa's ability to serve as a combined Joint Force Land Component Command and as a security partner in the strategically important Balkans and Black Sea regions, while sustaining our activities in Northern Europe and Africa. Defender Europe 21 will feature the participation of approximately 28,000 multinational forces from 27 nations conducting nearly simultaneous operations across more than 30 training areas in 12 countries. Critical to this endeavor will be the strict COVID prevention and mitigation strategy implemented by U.S. and participating nations. Exercises like Defender Europe 21 demonstrates that the U.S. commitment to NATO is ironclad, and that NATO allies and partners stand stronger together.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
I really do hope that you paid attention to the video that I played at the beginning of this podcast, because it's really going to set the tone of everything that we're going to be talking about today, because all the developments are really important. They have actually accelerated as the days went by. You know, last week I was in the hospital with my dad, taking care of him and everything. So that, you know, impaired me from being able to do the podcast until this week. And even though I was there with my dad, I was still paying attention to the news. You know, I looked at the news from where it first started being reported about Ukraine and Russia and everything like that. You know, everything accelerated very quickly in just 1 week. And now we have timelines. Again, you know, that is the important thing. So at least this silver lining of the things that could happen, that now we have timelines. And that is something that I've been warning you in this podcast. I've been telling you that the possibility for the United States to go to war with China has been in the next several months, several years, you know, in 10 years, whatever the case may be, or whenever it happens, but the timeline is there. And you have to do everything, you know, you have to prepare with a sense of urgency in order for you to be prepared for the eventual war that we're going to have against China. But now everything has shifted focus from China to the United States and Russia, and actually NATO and Ukraine and everybody else. But the point is that even though China has not gone away, that's still there. That possibility, that threat is still there. Now we're adding Russia on top of it. You know, for a long time, you know, the entire time that Trump was in office, everything was focused around China with the tariffs and everything like that. Now that Biden is in the office, in the White House, everything shifted the focus. Even though it was still there, we have shifted the focus onto Russia right now, especially in the past week and a half. So now that we have all this going on, it's really important that you do everything in your power, not only to keep prepping and continue doing it, but, you know, to know this information. And one of the things that I've always told you here in this podcast is that it doesn't really matter how much information you know. If you don't do anything about it, if you don't prepare for it, then it's not going to do you any good. And at the end of the day, you're going to suffer with everybody else who didn't get prepared. All right. That is the reason why our mission here in this podcast, in this organization, in this, you know, community of preppers, whatever you want to call it, our mission is, you know, to reestablish or restore the reputation to preppers. And not only that, but, you know, also be like a refuge to the unprepared, because they didn't want to prepare, but we did. You know, I don't want to be the selfish prepper, or this community of preppers to be selfish to where, hey, we prepare, you stay away. But rather be like, all right, we prepare, you didn't, but this is the steps that we can take in order for us to be able to get ourselves out of this situation, you know, as Christians, as humanity, as Americans, whatever you want to label it. But we can work together so the suffering can be kept at a minimum, especially if there's more than one prepper, you know, in your area. So those possibilities are there. And now that we have a timeline that we could possibly go to war in the next month, it is going to be essential for us to make sure that we have everything in place, especially with spring coming around, because now we have the opportunity not only to continue to gather the things that we need for food and water, because those are the very first things that are going to go out the window, but also to grow our own garden, to get our own farm animals, and do everything in our ability to be self-sustained in the next month, because if a war does break out right now in the next month, that the first thing that's going to suffer is going to be the supply chain. If you thought that COVID-19 freaked people out and made everybody go nuts, go into the stores, clean everything out, just wait for when bullets and nukes and bombs are flying around, people are going to freak out even more. And the United States has pretty much been like a tinderbox ready to explode, and that just might do it. So we really have to make sure that we pay attention to this information, that we know what's going on, that we prepare for it accordingly, accurately. But not only that, that we share this information with your friends and family. Because I'm doing my part. I'm making the podcast. I'm looking at the information. I'm gathering it for you. I'm putting in a presentation, uploading it into all the social medias that we have. We have done our part. Now, your part is for you to put this on your social media so your friends and family can see it, so they can see what are the proper steps to prepare, what they can do if we actually do go to war in the next month or sooner, and the things that they can do for them to kind of not have such a horrible time if nukes do start flying in the United States. All right, so that's what I'm going to be focusing in this podcast. And also all the steps that have been taken, or how everything has accelerated with this possible war against Russia. And even though right now everything's between Ukraine and Russia, the United States is going to get involved very, very quickly. And as I'm going to show you, NATO will too. All right, so the first headline that I have for you is really important because it really shows what I've been, introducing this video as. This is from ibtimes.co.in, and it reads, "World War will begin within 4 weeks," warned Russian military analysts. All right, and pretty much what they have been saying, because, I could read the article, but I'm going to give you the gist of it, because everything else that I prepare for you in the podcast is kind of the same thing, but, in a nutshell. I want to take that away, and actually I want to go into the individual articles so you can have the full information. So what they're saying in this headline, they're saying that, the analysts have been looking at everything that has been unfolding this past week and a half, with the troop buildup, with, the movements from Russia, the movements from the Ukraine, the involvement of NATO, the rhetoric from the United States. All of those things being put into consideration is making them feel, this analyst saying that the possibility of war in the next 4 weeks, in the next month, it's a real possibility. So we have to pay attention to that. We have to make sure that we understand what we're seeing, because at any moment the nukes can start flying, because right now they are actually fighting already. Right? There's parts of Ukraine and Russia and places like that where the city is called Donbass, I think that's how it's pronounced, where they have saying that the bullets are flying already. Mortars are already going through, blowing up everywhere. The video has come out where it's, you can hear the sound of bombs going off. So as far as we know, as far as I know, bullets are already flying between Ukraine and Russia. And that is really important, because eventually the United States is going to get involved, which we kind of have, but indirectly. And NATO is going to get involved. And Russia is really going to be very concerned about, the United States and NATO being involved, to where they're going to give the ultimatum. Eventually it's going to come, but we just don't know when. Now, I have a quote. I got this from TrueNews.com, and, they do excellent reporting. And as I've disclosed here in the past, I do listen to what they say. And I've actually got this still from them. And this is from Alexei Arestrovich, representative in the Trilateral Contact Group in Donbass. And this is on the side of Ukraine. Quote, "A large-scale NATO exercise called Defender Europe 2021 has begun, which means protect Europe. The scenario is that from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, we are practicing for, well, let's put it directly, the war with Russia. The scenario of armed confrontation with Russia. The active phase of these exercises is May through June, and now the preparation has begun. Deployment of forces, logistics, transfer of equipment, which is also an element of the exercise. Okay, and the reason that this quote is very important is because they're telling people, exactly why they're preparing, because they know there's going to be a war with Russia. When? We don't know. Eventually it's going to happen. For the Russian analysts, they think it's going to be in the next month. But even if it's not in the next month, NATO, United States, and what was it in the video? Like 28 other countries are going to come together and they're going to exercise in this manner. All right, so here's the thing. It has happened in the past where we really thought we were about to go to war, okay? For example, when Obama was in office, I don't remember all the details, but just going off memory, I remember that there was a strike somewhere. And it was really, at that moment up to Putin to know what to do, for us to know what he was going to do. Because he did warn that if something specific happened, that he was going to retaliate. And that specific thing did happen, but then he didn't retaliate. All right, that was one of the moments when we thought, holy crap, we're about to go to war. All right, World War III is about to start. The other one is where, all of Russia, or at least 40 million citizens of Russia, they practiced to go into bunkers, what to do in a nuke, getting in their area or in their city, exactly how, bunkers and what to put in it and stuff like that. Those things were being practiced in Russia. That was another moment where we thought we were going to go to war against them because they're getting prepared. At least Russia is getting their people prepared, if not for something that hasn't happened yet, but at least they have the knowledge for it. The spirit of preparedness is in the Russian people. They know what to do, they know where to go, and they know what to expect. Here in the United States, they don't tell us anything. It's mainly the alternative media and people like me, preppers that tell you, hey, this is what's going on, this is how you can prepare. But Russia is getting their people ready, they're getting ready, and they're moving equipment. Even though it's within their own border, they're moving equipment, making sure that if NATO gets involved, they're going to bring out the heavy guns, all right? Right now, Ukraine and Russia may be shooting at each other, just here and there, and, some bombs flying here and there, but nothing major. It will eventually get to that point. So this is the reason why Ukraine wants to do this, a certain thing. Now, the next headline comes from the economiccollapseblog.com. And the headline says, as Russian tanks move towards Ukraine, the globe braces for the possibility that World War III could soon erupt. At this hour, more Russian military forces are massed near Ukraine's border than we have ever seen before. Western military leaders say that they are concerned that the troop movements that we have witnessed in recent days may be leading up to an invasion. And if an invasion does happen, it will greatly test the resolve of the Biden administration, the European leaders, and NATO brass. In particular, the hawks in the Biden administration would almost certainly not be willing to just sit back and let the Russians conquer all of Ukraine. There would likely be a major response by the United States, and that would set off a chain reaction that could ultimately spark World War III. So what made Russia suddenly move a massive invasion force towards Ukraine? All right, and before I continue with the article, I do want to say, the Western media, it is making it look like Russia's the aggressor. Okay, they're making the words they're using, the propaganda, the keywords that they're telling the American people, the ones who are kind of reporting on this, they're saying that Russia is the aggressor, that Russia is the one, or are the ones who are getting everything in place to just take over Ukraine, but it's actually the opposite, okay? In the next part of this article, we'll let you know just that, all right? This is what it says. Well, it turns out that the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, essentially signed a declaration of war against Russia on March 24th. The document that he signed is known as Decree Number 117/2021, and you won't read anything about it in the corporate media. Basically, this decree makes it the official policy of the government of Ukraine to retake Crimea from Russia. Of course, the Russians will never hand over Crimea willingly because they consider it to be Russian territory, and so Ukraine will have to take it by force. This is essentially a declaration of war against Russia, and Zelensky would have never signed such a document without the approval of the Biden administration. Following the signing of decree number 117/2021, we started to see Russian forces pour into Crimea and into separate held areas of eastern Ukraine at a staggering rate. All right, so what I just read to you is really important because that is the reason why the escalation has started, or the buildup of forces has started, and the shooting has started, because Ukraine pretty much are the ones who want to take Crimea back, and Russia's not gonna let that happen. Okay, even though it got annexed in 2024 by Russia, they're claiming it, they own it pretty much, and they're saying they're gonna give it back. For Russia, there's their holy land. That is not something that they're gonna willingly just give up like that without a fight. And we know that Russia will kick Ukraine's butt very, very easily. The only thing that is really stopping Putin from doing anything, at least at this point, is that they know that NATO will get involved. They know that the United States is going to get involved. And that should concern you, because that means that our troops are going to get involved. And now we're going to be marked for a nuke as well. Okay, that's what we have to pay attention now. Of course, Ukraine knows exactly what the heck is going on. And they know that they cannot take on Russia, by themselves. So that is the reason the next headline is very, very important, because that is going to eventually make United States, NATO, and Ukraine cross the line for Russia to where they have to do something, because if what I'm going to read to you in a second does come to pass, then it's going to be a lot more difficult to Russia. It's going to be a lot more difficult for Russia to have a successful plan that would have the least amount of casualties. Okay, so this is from theguardian.com. And it reads, Ukraine urges NATO to hasten membership as Russian troops gather. Ukraine's president has called on NATO and key member states to hasten his country's membership of the Western Military Alliance in response to a growing buildup of Russian forces on his country's border. Zelensky spoke to NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday and urged for Ukraine to be put on a pathway to future membership to halt the long-running conflict in the eastern Donbass region. Similar requests for a pathway to NATO membership were made by Zelensky in calls with Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, on Monday, and again on Tuesday with Justin Trudeau, Canada's PM, following the call with the UK. Ukraine called on the country, along with allies, to strengthen its presence in the region. NATO is the only way to end the war in Donbass. Ukraine MAP, Membership Action Plan, will be a real signal for Russia, Zelensky told Stoltenberg, according to Kiev's readout of their conversation. All right, so again, really important, because, right now that the Ukraine pretty much declared war on Russia, they understand they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. So they pretty much, what they did is they slapped Russia in the face, and then they ran back, and now they're begging NATO, the United States, Canada, and everybody else to pretty much come along and help and let them be in the membership of NATO, because a very important thing would happen if they are put into the membership, right? If NATO does accept Ukraine as another member of NATO, that means that if Russia and Ukraine fight again in the border, like they're doing right now, with fighting, shooting at each other, throwing mortars at each other, that would allow Ukraine to be able to call on the articles that would pretty much protect Ukraine, that would actually call on the alliance to come and help defeat Russia, right? Because that's exactly what the deal is right now with the United States and all the other NATO countries, that if one country gets attacked, all the other members have to come to the aid and defeat the enemy. So if Ukraine does come into the NATO alliance and they have another fight, because let's say, they have declared war and they want Crimea back, Ukraine does, that means that when Russia attacks back, that would involve everybody in the NATO alliance. So that's why I said a minute ago that it would be really important for Russia to take care of this problem before that happens, because they would have the ability to, invade or put down the aggression, whatever the case may be, without having, potentially without having, or in theory, without having the United States and NATO involved, which more than likely they're going to be involved anyways. But what I'm saying is that legally, the United States and the rest of NATO are not legally bound to help. Right now it would be, okay, yes, we'll help you, or no, we won't. It's up in the air. But what we have seen from the United States is that we're going to get involved, which the next headline comes from Zero Hedge. All right, and the headline says, U.S. makes large military hardware delivery to Ukraine's army after Biden pledges Crimea is Ukraine. Russian state sources are alleging that Washington under the Biden administration is ramping up military aid to Ukraine after local media observed a U.S. cargo ship delivering 350 tons of military equipment, including tactical vehicles, to Ukraine's Odessa port. The delivery follows last year's U.S. DoD announcement of an additional $125 million worth of military assistance package for Ukraine, unveiled in March, which involves equipment, training, and military advisory support, with an additional $150 million waiting for congressional and political approval. Recall that a little over a month after Biden taking office, the White House issued an official communique commemorating Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, as the statement puts it. Quote, the United States continues to stand with Ukraine and its allies and partners today, as it has from the beginning of this conflict, and this somber anniversary will reaffirm a simple truth: Crimea is Ukraine, the Biden administration said on February 26. The United States will not and will never recognize Russia's purported annexation of the peninsula, and we will stand with Ukraine against Russia's aggressive acts. Okay, again, something really important, because right now, or at least right there, is the intent and the action. We're sending all this military equipment, we're sending the advisors, we're giving them the training, we're giving them the money, and we're saying that we're 100% behind them, and we recognize that what Russia did was illegal. So that gives us, or actually that gives Ukraine, the perfect opportunity to be able to declare the war that he just did, and know that he's going to have, at the very least, the United States, in its corner. Because if the United States gets attacked by Russia, guess what happens? The articles from NATO get invoked, and now the entire NATO alliance has to come out against Russia. And that is the whole purpose for NATO. Let's just remember that fact, that the reason that NATO was created to begin with, or at least that's something that became along, is that they were there to fight against Russia. Eventually, they knew that day was going to come, and it's probably here in the next month. So that is the whole purpose of NATO right now, that they have created the boogeyman, which is Russia, and now they have the perfect opportunity to continue with the plans, whatever it is that they might have had when Obama was in office, because it looked like we were going to go to war against Russia. We thought the nukes were going to fly, and Putin has said in the past, these are well-known quotes that he've said, that if they do get attacked, they're pretty much on the dead man switch, that even if they do get taken out, all the nukes are going to go everywhere, especially in Europe, and the United States will get hit too. And let's not forget, China is also involved in all of this, even though we're focusing all of our attention on Russia right now. But remember, NATO also wants to get involved with China. They also want to include them in the scope of, patrolling and I guess you can say of manipulation and everything like that. They want to involve China in it too, because they see China as a bigger threat, a long-term threat, even though they don't, right now is Russia. So I have this from the TASS.com, which is a Russian newspaper, and everything that we have been seeing in the Western media, whether it's, alternative or mainstream media, the way that we're framing it is like Russia is the bad guy. The Russia are the ones who are doing this. They're the one pushing for war. They're the ones who are, building up the entire forces in their border, moving equipment and doing everything. But on Russia's part, they're the ones saying that it's the West doing this, which is exactly what this article is talking about. The article's headline says, Russian security chief warns U.S. would be to blame for tough days with Moscow. Like I mentioned, that's from TASS.com. Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev, has said that if the United States created tough days in relations with Russia, it would be responsible for that. Since they predicted that, that means that they are planning that, and if they are planning that, they can implement that, but then they will be responsible for the steps that they would take, he told reporters on Wednesday, commenting on remarks by U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. So pretty much what they're saying is that if the United States wants to take this down this road, that's fine, it's up to them, but they're going to be responsible for everything that happens from that point on. Pretty much saying, we're free and clear from this conflict. We don't want this. The United States is deliberately creating all the circumstances that's going to create the war that nobody wants. Finally, that World War III is coming along, and people are going to start freaking out about it, as this become more real, and it's no longer something that's happening on the other side of the world. When the conflict comes here, or at least has the very big potential of something flying through here, that's when we're going to see people freak out. And they're saying that if something like that was to happen, where something explosive happened, where World War III broke out, they're saying that it wouldn't be their fault. They're saying that they're not taking the steps necessary for war to break out all throughout the world. That's why they're putting it on the United States and the West and everybody else in NATO. All right. So right now, I want to read to you this last headline, and then I'm going to get into the preparedness, because I do believe that it's important for you to know everything that's going on first, and then move on to the prepping, because it's pretty much what I've been saying in the past, but now we have to have this sense of urgency. Now, the last headline that I have for you is about the UK, and if you remember, Ukraine was pretty much begging the UK to pretty much, I guess you can say, convince everybody else in NATO to go ahead and include Ukraine to become a member of NATO. All right. But let's pay attention to this. All right. This next article is really, really important, because now we have I guess you can say, the crossroads between all the military aggressions and all the military movements and escalations and everything. Now everything has crossed with how broke the United States is, how broke Europe is, and that is going to reflect later on, because Russia has actually worked very hard to pay off its debt. All right, I've shown you here the charts in the past where Russia hardly has any debt, or at least debt to GDP. They're doing really good. They actually have collected a lot of gold and silver, which that would actually make their currency stronger. And they're not spending so much money on their military. They're spending it on the technology to be advanced to where it's superior to the United States. And right now they're kicking our butts in a bunch of areas when it comes to technological advances. All right, but this one is gonna focus on the UK, because they're also broke. This problem that I've been telling you, that the financial system is happening. Remember, I told you, if you are gonna decide to flee the United States, just make sure you have everything in place wherever you think you're gonna spend the apocalypse, because it doesn't matter at this point where you go in Europe, they're also broke. And if you go South America, South America has always been broke, right? It's always been known for having very poor countries. Where else can you go? You can go to Africa. Africa has also been known for being for having a lot of poor countries, or a lot of rogue governments. You can go to Asia, but you just go into the communist hands, and you can go to Russia, but you can. Some people say that you're a little more free there, but they're also under strict rules when they can just put whoever they want in prison for just protesting. What I'm saying is that if you're going to make your move, it has to be soon, and wherever it is that you decide to spend the apocalypse, you have to make sure that that's where you have everything you're going to need, and that's where you're going to make your last stand. Whether it's in the United States, whether it's in the UK, whether it's somewhere in Europe, just make sure where you are going to be, you're going to be content. All right, so this is from antiwar.com, and the article's headline says, Britain's military to intensify activities against new threat of Russia. Britain plans to invest over 20 billion euros to modernize their armed forces, but no one knows where the money will come from. The British Navy is in bad condition. Forbes wrote last year about Britain's 2 new aircraft carriers, saying, quote, having blown billions of dollars building the ships, the UK government no longer can afford the aircraft, escorts, and support ships that help the platoons deploy, protect them, and give them striking power, end quote. With no money, an efficient Navy, and plans to reduce the ground forces by about 10,000 soldiers, that would bring the British military to its smallest size in 200 years. It is not clear how London can achieve its great ambition of surrounding Russia in the Arctic, Baltic Sea, Western Balkans, and the Black Sea. In addition to cutting 10,000 soldiers, the British military will also do away with 2 frigates, 14 C-130 Hercules troop carriers, 24 Typhoon fighters, and Hawk jets. Okay, so pretty much what they're saying is that the UK military is in a really bad shape. All right, they don't know where they're going to get the money, but if we have learned anything from the United States, is that they're just going to print the money away. I don't know if they're going to be able to, now that I think about it, since they did get out of the European Union. But the point is that even if they have to borrow from the United States, they will, because the United States has an endless supply of money at this point. That's what it seems like. But all of this is really important, because if we get to the point where we're just, talking a lot of crap, but we cannot back it because we're broke, how more desperate are we going to be to go to war when we have the ability to do it? Because if we're too broke to even go, what are we going to do? Are we going to be in the middle of the drills, and then we're just gonna bring everybody home without finishing the drills, or what's gonna happen? I mean, they're gonna figure something out, because their ambition is right now that they're gonna do something about this. But the point is that if we're gonna go to war, and the United States, it's broke, the hedge funds are falling apart, the UK has no money, Europe is broke as crap too. And the only ones that are strong enough with the strong economy are Russia and China, because China has just backed its crypto yuan with oil, something the United States did. So how are we going to be looking this in the future? How everything's going to turn out? It looks like everything has been put in place to where this moment is going to happen. We are going to go to war. We just have to make sure that we're ready for it. Now, we're gonna get into the prepping of this video, because the next video will be about China. Everything that I just said about them backing their yuan, their cryptocurrency with oil. All that is gonna be in the next podcast, because it's really, really important. Now, prepping. Okay, if you have been here in this podcast for a while, you know exactly what I'm gonna say. You have to make sure that you get prepared with a sense of urgency, and you do it quickly. If you're new to the podcast, then you have to understand this. There are 14 categories that you have to get prepared for. But, all right, if you're new to preparedness, you have to make sure that you focus everything in your newfound hobby or whatever to be surrounded around the supply chain. The supply chain is going to be the very first thing that's going to suffer. Because if we do have a nuke flying through here and successfully touching down, you can bet your bottom dollar that everyone's going to be scared. All the drivers are going to go home, and they're going to want to be with their families. So that is going to disrupt the food supply chain in a heartbeat. Then if we have an EMP, that's going to disrupt everything. All right, there's going to be no water. There's going to be no power. There's going to be no hospitals, and there's going to be no grocery stores. So those are the 4 things that you have to focus on when you're talking about preparing for the supply chain to collapse. And the reason that I describe it in this way, that I give it this definition, is because all 4 of these give you a service. And without one of those, your standard of living would greatly decrease. Okay? You need food all the time. It's something that you have to buy every single week, every single day, and for some people up to 3 times a day. And if there's no grocery stores because there's no power, there's no trucks running, there's an invasion force, whatever the case may be, that's going to be your number one issue. The second issue, which really should be in number one, is water. Because the moment that you finish drinking whatever it is that you may have at home, whether it's, wine, whether it's water, juice, whatever the case may be, whatever you may have at home, the moment you drink the last drop, you're 3 days away from dying from dehydration. So that is the reason why those two are going to be the very most important ones you have to take care of. The next one is medical, okay? Things can happen when crap hits the fan. People get shot, people get cut, people get broken bones, people who didn't know had an illness is suddenly going to come out. Without the hospital being there, you're going to have to take care of all those needs. You're going to have to know how to, take care of broken bones, how to take care of deep cuts, how to stitch them, how to clean them up properly, how to make sure that no infection sets in, and if it does, what you're going to do about it. Those are the things that you have to learn now that you have time. Hopefully nothing happens in a month from now. Hopefully it happens again like it happened during the Obama administration, where we thought we were going to go to war. Like, it seemed like we were seconds away from going to war, but nothing happened. Hopefully it will be the same this time around. Hopefully Ukraine and Russia cool it. Everybody goes home happy and nobody cares, what happened, and everybody forgets about it. Hopefully. All right. So that is the reason why you have to make sure that you get that sense of urgency and get that training on the first date. And lastly, it's power. The Congress had a EMP commission, and it was up to that commission to find out what would happen if an EMP got detonated over the United States, because we have the documents that China would use an EMP as their very first strike, because they understand how much we depend on their power. Okay, from hospitals to the grocery stores to water being pumped into our houses, from everything that we use the power for. They understand that if that gets taken out, that would be our Achilles heel, and a lot of people would die. That's exactly what the EMP Commission found, that if an EMP gets detonated over the United States, within 2 years, over 95% of the country would perish. You heard that right. Over 95% of the country would perish. And actually, I've shared this information with private conversations with family members and other people. And, it's hard for them to believe that something like that could kill so many people so quickly. But once you get into the details of there being no grocery stores, people don't know how to grow food, people don't know how to keep farm animals at their house. Some people don't even have the space to do that because they live, in apartments in a major city, in the 40th floor or whatever. So those are going to be the factors that's going to make a lot of people have very miserable times. But if now that you're listening to this, and if you're a prepper or you're thinking about preparedness, these are the 4 things that you have to take care of. Because if the supply chain fails and you're prepared with all of these 4, you're going to be way better off than anybody else you know. Now, the rest of the categories are also important because those are going to be the things that you're going to need in order for you and your family to survive and to have a more tolerable, apocalyptic, I guess you could say, experience. Okay, so we talked about food, water, medicine, and energy. The other ones are alliance. And the reason that I put alliance on number 1 is because once you know exactly how many people are going to be in your alliance, you're going to know exactly how much food you're going to need, how much water you're going to need, how much medicine you're going to need, how many guns you're going to need. You're going to know how big of a territory you're going to need, how many acres, stuff like that, how many animals, how many plants, how big the plot has to be. That is the reason why you want to start with your alliance. You want to know exactly who you want in your corner when crap hits the fan. If we do go to war, if that eventuality that we're going to go to war here in the next month or 10 years, doesn't matter when, the day the nukes start flying, you will be ready. And you will know exactly who will be with you. The next thing is plan. The reason that the plan is important is because, as I mentioned a minute ago, you got to know exactly everything you're going to need, who's going to be the managers of, you know, all these categories, and who's going to be the working bees, who's, you know, who are you going to let into your alliance after they realize that they made a mistake for not joining you to begin with. You know, that's it, that all that gets involved in the plan. You know, who's going to be the communications expert, who's going to be the responsible to train everybody with their firearms, you know, who's going to be responsible for growing a medical garden and how to apply everything that you need to learn from that. All right, so that is the reason you want the plan. We already talked about the food, the water, the medical. Now the tactical, you're gonna need enough bullets to be able to fight a small war. Okay, and right now, even though it hasn't happened yet, the Biden administration is talking about taking out AR-15s, or, you know, guns of that type. That type of guns, along with the ammo that you would need to be able to you know, protect you and your family and your alliance, especially if an invading force comes through. You know, if you don't have it, it's going to be really tough. But it hasn't happened yet, so hopefully you know, they don't go through with it, and you are able to keep that ammo. You need to understand that everybody in the alliance needs the exact same type of firearm with the exact same ammo. The reason is because you have seen it in the movies, you have seen it in other videos from, you know, military videos, and you have seen it everywhere else, that the guns that are the same type, the same model and everything, they can share the same magazine. That's the reason you want the same one. That is the reason why the military uses the same gun, right? Everybody has the M16s. Everybody has, you know, let's say the Desert Eagle is the sidearm, because they can share the magazines, they can share the bullets, and it doesn't matter who picks up what weapon, they're all going to function the same. That is the reason why during tactical, you want to make sure that everybody in the alliance has the same weapon. Even if, you know, there's somebody who has their favorite gun, you know, that's cool, but you have to understand you have to train with this as well, just in case, you know, your favorite gun is not available anymore. All right. The next thing is communications. Communications are going to be very important, especially when you hit with an EMP or with a cyber attack, because once the TV gets, you know, goes offline, there's no more internet or any other type of communications like cell phones and others. Having a ham radio is going to be important for you to be able to communicate not only with people outside your area, you know, from your house in your city, but also from other people from another country. Because let's say that the United States does get nuked, but not Canada or not Mexico. If you have the ability to communicate with somebody in those countries and ask them, hey, what's going on? You know, I haven't heard any explosions or anything like that, but the entire country's just gone dark. Do you have any information? And then they'll be able to tell you what's been reported in their countries about what's happening in the United States. And you'll have a better idea, especially if there's an invading force coming through. Let's say you live in Texas and, you know, you're communicating with somebody in, let's just say, Australia. And they say, hey, man, they're telling us that there's an invading force coming through the southern border up into Texas, and they're going to be, you know, in El Paso in 5 hours. If you're in El Paso, that's going to be very priceless information for you, because then you can know exactly where they're coming from and what you can expect, you know, what type of resistance you can gather with the sheriffs and everybody else around. So that is the reason why communication is going to be important if this type of war does come around, right? That's why we have to be ready. I already talked about energy. You know, a lot of people need it, but really the most important thing in your house that needs to be powered is not your internet, it's not your TV, you know, it's not the gadgets or anything like that. Really, the only two that are the most important in your entire house is your refrigerator and your stove, because one is going to keep your food from spoiling so fast, and the other one is going to help you cook, you know, because you can think, hey, you know, if I don't have power, I just can go outside and cook. But what if it's raining? What if it's pouring rain and you're not able to do it? All right, you'll say, well, I guess I'll grill in my grill outside. But what if you run out of charcoal, or, you know, you didn't know that you were out of propane and stuff like that? That is the reason why having a way to cook inside your house is going to be very important. and the appliance is going to be more important for that. It's going to be your stove. All right, so hopefully, if you have an electric stove, you can have the redundancy of getting either a wood burning stove, or get a fireplace that's wood burning fireplace with a flat top to where you can cook on top of that. All right, those are the possibilities that you can get. Now, survival training. Survival training is important because if something was to happen, I hope you're not in the group of people who believe that as soon as the smaller things happen, like a war, or the government becomes tyrannical, whatever, you're gonna just flee to the woods and you're gonna stay there forever and you're gonna live a happy life ever after. But that is not the case, especially if you have a powerful government coming after you. Although it is important to have that knowledge, because let's say, like I mentioned a minute ago with the scenario where there's an invasion force coming through and they're gonna be in your area within 5 hours, then you're gonna have to go into the woods, into a safe haven. And if you're going through there, you're gonna have to know some survival training. You're gonna have to have that in order for you to be able to navigate through the woods successfully outside of the main roads, because that's where all the military will first go through, because that's the path of less resistance. So that is the reason why it's important for you to have the survival training. And along with that, the bug out bags. Not only for you, but everybody in your alliance, including children. There's going to be a totally different backpack from an adult, from a children, but everybody needs to have it and have at least the very basic essentials. All right. The next thing is a bug out vehicle. You're going to have a bug out vehicle that is going to get you to another place faster, and hopefully you have hardened your car to be resistant to an EMP. There's several ways to doing that. All right. The only thing that you really have to worry about during an EMP with a vehicle is that the computer chip inside of it, the computer that pretty much makes the entire car work, that is not damaged. Now, you can either try to find a way to wrap it to where there's a minimal exposure to an EMP. The next best thing to do is to buy another computer that will go with the model of your car, and to put it up in a EMP proof, Faraday cage or EMP proof bag and stuff like that. That way, if an EMP does happen, and your car no longer works because the computer is not working anymore, then you can replace it, and that can give you the ability to have a car when crap hits the fan. All right, that is one of the ways to do it. The next thing is bug out location. You're gonna have to have a place to go, whether it is the place that you live right now, and you're gonna make everything ready for when crap hits the fan where you live now. That's fine. But you're going to have another place to go if crap does hit the fan, where you can flee the area. Okay, hopefully you don't live in the city. If you live in the city or in the suburbs, you have to understand that you're in the worst place possible, especially if you only have like a quarter acre in your property, because that is not defensible. Okay, if BLM or anybody else can come through and they're able to throw a Molotov cocktail from the edge of the road towards your house and hit it with no problem, then you have a problem. Okay, you want to have enough space between the main road and your house to where if they throw rocks, Molotov cocktails, whatever it is that they may have, they can't even get anywhere near. That's the type of terrain or the way you want to have your house set up, and that's what you want to do with your bug out location. All right. And, maybe people are coming to your house. For you, it's going to be your bug out location. For everybody else in your line, it's going to be their bug out location. Or everybody can put money together to buy a place or to buy a property out in the country that is going to be very remote, and everybody goes there when crap hits the fan, all right? And you're going to have everything in place: your food, your water, your animals, your communication, your weapons, everything. And, of course, make sure that nobody can break into it and just take everything before you get there. All right, so you're going to have to take all those steps, and everything can be achieved a lot easier with an alliance. All right, the next thing is hygiene. Hygiene is going to be one of the most important things, because what I've learned and what I've seen in other countries, especially, I come from a poor country, one of the ways that people get diseases very fast, or they get, skin rashes and stuff like that, is because of the lack of hygiene. Not because they don't want to shower, they don't want to be clean, but because they don't have the ability to. They don't have the soaps, the shampoos, the rags and everything like that to be able to clean themselves and keep all the disease away. And that's what we've seen in Venezuela, that's what we've seen in Mexico, that's what we've seen in Honduras and other places in Africa and stuff like that. All right, hygiene becomes a very important thing right away. So that is the reason why it has made the list. Because everybody in the alliance have to have one specific person that takes care of that, and they're the ones that accumulate all the shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrushes. They're gonna know, or they're gonna find a way to make their own soap naturally, to have everything they need for everybody else to be able to take a shower and not contaminate your drinking supply or anything like that. Or at least if you're gonna use part of your drinking supply, it has to be on the essential parts of your body that are going to be clean, so disease doesn't set in. All right. And finally is clothing. Clothing is the final important one, because what we learned in Texas, this is a very recent example, is that you only have two extremes on the weather: very, very cold and very, very hot. All right. Hot is not that difficult to prepare for, because you can get so naked before they call the police. And there's nothing else you can do besides that, I'm talking about clothing wise. But when it gets cold, you can bundle up, you can have a lot of clothing on you, the right shoes, the right socks, the good fabric that's going to keep you warm, like wool and, fleece and stuff like that. Those are the ones that you can stock up on and prepare. That is the reason why one person in your alliance has to take care of that. And even though it may seem like they have the easiest one, it's really not, because you have to take care of shoes, socks, undergarments, pants, shirts, sweaters, jackets, hoods, gloves, scarves, face coverings, and everything. So the clothing is also a very important one, because you want to prepare for the worst case, which would be extreme cold, especially if you're running through the woods and somebody's chasing you, and you cannot just build a fire, because then you're going to give your position away. All right. So I really hope that this talk about war really open your eyes that we could potentially be in a nuclear war in the next month. Okay. The internet is going to go away. Communication is going to go away. Your power may go away, stuff like that. We're going into the spring. You have to make sure that you take care of, at the very least, the supply chain. Okay, the way that I've explained to you. That way you can be in a much better position than millions of Americans all throughout the country. All right, so I really hope you enjoyed this information. Please share this information with your friends and family all throughout your social media, because this information needs to get out. People need to learn how to prepare, especially if they're going to start preparing for the first time. If you have been a prepper for a while and I've opened your eyes to certain things, then hurry up and get adjusted, right? Hurry up and have the sense of urgency and do everything you can in order for you to be prepared for you, your family, and your alliance. All right, so, just a reminder, I do have the store still, MemmenSurvivalStore.com. On there, you're going to find everything you need for your preparedness. But right now, some of the supplies are in short supply because, people have been buying. The Suez Canal thing created a problem. There's just certain things. So you can go in there, check out what we have available, and get it for your preparedness. Also, I'm giving a book away for free. All we need your help is with shipping. The book retails for $24.99. The shipping is $9.99. So you are in fact getting it for free. So we really appreciate if you can get it, so you can get my thoughts on the things that I think you need to prepare for and how to do it. All right, I'm working on another book, which is kind of slow because, I do have a job. I do have, I work at least 8 or 9 hours a day. I have a family. So I have other things going on. So the book is being worked on, but it's working slowly, especially with my dad getting sick and stuff like that. So it may not be ready anytime soon, but when it's available, I'll let you guys know. So I may choose, about 10 people to give it away to, so they can go ahead and get it in their hands and share it with their friends and family. So anyways, Again, we're in a bunch of social medias. Please share this information, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave comments, do everything you can. And also want to remind you that I have the two the two groups of people in this podcast, where they're like the hour-long podcast and they're like the 20 minutes. And I have read your comments, and I'm really sorry that I have not been able to answer. I really do appreciate all the people who have given me good feedback on the podcast, and I really do appreciate your suggestions and everything like that. And I don't want to seem like I don't care. I do care. All right, I just have a lot going on right now. So this video will be split into 20-minute parts, and you already know, if you see the same videos, that's the reason why. All right, so again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
America in our nation's capital, this is the news with Rick Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to welcome all of you who are watching from all over the world, including those of you who are watching on your phones on the portable TV app. There are two big pieces of news that are happening as we speak. Now, why in the world the U.S. media in general is ignoring these stories, it's kind of tough to reconcile. This weekend, China made it official. It is moving forward, indeed, with a $400 billion deal with Iran. What's the deal? Well, it goes something like this. China will pump $400 billion into the flailing Iranian economy. And for the next 25 years, Iran will pump a steady stream of oil into the Chinese economy. That's the deal. Why is China doing a deal with Iran? Because it is making good, it says, on its promise to Iran based on the nuclear agreement both countries signed back in 2015. You remember that? Yeah, it's the same deal that the United States backed out of. President Biden now says he wants a new deal with Iran, but China is telling Mr. Biden, no, you can't sign a treaty and then back out and start over again. You have to honor your commitment, sir. So even if you won't, we will. That's China's talking point. That's their perspective for why they're doing this, right? So the United States' perspective seems to be that China is becoming obstinate and dangerous and may need to be put in its place. So here's what the United States is going to be doing. The U.S. is announcing war games. Here's some of the video or some of the pictures or images of these said war games that the United States has from time to time. It'll carry out these war games this summer to try and prepare for the eventuality of a war with China, while also having to fight, possibly at the same time, other countries around the world, including Russia. The Pentagon says these war games or military exercises are being designed to equip the U.S. military's top leaders on how to react to a fictional global crisis erupting on multiple fronts, and how to move all the military pieces around, like the bombers and the aircraft carriers. But there's something else here that at least I noted this as I was doing my research on this assignment, that there's something else in this report that kind of caught my eye as we look at these images of these war games. And maybe it's going to raise questions for you as well. The Pentagon also notes that these military exercises you see behind me are going to be used to set the future military budget of the United States. Ask yourself this question. Do you think when all is said and done after these war games, they will ask for less? Maybe, in fact, a better question is, have they ever asked for less? Let's get into this here on the News with Rick Sanchez, where we always say and truly believe it's time to do news again, by golly.
The Man-Made Survival Show.